I am joined here with John Litzler, and just want to take a few minutes to kind of talk to John and tell us kind of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm an attorney and I work with a nonprofit group in San Antonio called Christian Unity Ministries. And there are several different divisions to our ministry. We do lots of different things, but what I do is I head up our church law division, which helps other religious nonprofits, particularly churches, not just churches, but mainly churches, with legal issues that come up. And I love what I get to do, and I love this ministry that I get to work with, and I specifically love that I'm helping churches.
Over the summer, there's been a lot of big cases been settled. Supreme Court's made a lot of decisions. Some of these things are going to impact churches already. What are things that you're seeing and maybe that you feel like maybe churches need to know about, pastors, whatever, need to know about?
Yeah, so one of the big ones, and I'm not sure if this is what you want me to talk about or not, hopefully it is, but one of the big ones had to do with employment discrimination. There were actually two cases involving employment discrimination. And it's really important because it has to do with who churches can hire and fire and make employment decisions about. And so the first case was actually three consolidated cases that dealt with the meaning of sex under the Civil Rights Act and whether sex included sexual orientation and gender identity. And it's a long, complicated legal analysis, but the shorthand version is the court concluded that it did. And so when Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, from the 1960s, when it says you can't discriminate based on sex, that includes someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. And that could have profound implications for churches and Christian organizations. But there was another case near the end of the session that dealt with employment in a different context. It wasn't under Title VII, but it had to do with age discrimination and disability discrimination. And it was these two Catholic teachers out in California. They were school teachers at a private school. And so the question was whether they could be discriminated against when hiring, whether they could go forward with their claims. The church said they didn't discriminate, but these teachers said that they had, and whether they could go forward with the claims. And the Supreme Court said they couldn't because the church has autonomy over who it hires under the First Amendment, under this First Amendment doctrine called the ministerial exception. And that's really important because when you take those two cases together, what it seems to be communicating is, yes, ordinary businesses can't discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender identity, but churches can under the First Amendment. They have that leeway. And that's important because while to some people those categories might seem separate, they might seem part of sex on the list of things. I think for a lot of churches, they would say, yes, it is discrimination based on sex, but it's also really on religion. Do you share our religious beliefs about these things? So that Supreme Court opinion at the end was really important because, churches, to think of the obvious situation, a church shouldn't have to hire someone who's atheist and doesn't share their beliefs about God. So you should be able to discriminate based on those types of things.
So what do you think the implications will be for churches? Is it just churches are going to be protected and therefore kind of continue as normal? Or do you think that there's going to be some challenges for churches to try to navigate through this?
Unfortunately, I think there will be some challenges. I think it's going to be pretty case specific. One of the things that was really important in these Supreme Court opinions on this is the religious functions that the employee carries out. And so obviously licensed or ordained ministers are going to fit that category. But in this situation, even the school teachers were, even though they taught some secular subjects like math, they also went through some Catholic workbooks with the kids and took the kids to chapel. And those religious components were enough. The question is, what about an administrative assistant or an office assistant? They are the first person that people see sometimes when they come into the church doors, and they're expected to be able to share the love of Christ with the people who come in through the doors. Is that enough of a religious role that they qualify? And what about like custodial staff? If they don't have any religious components to their role, what if it's a completely secular job function traditionally? Then will you be allowed to discriminate based on that person's religious beliefs and that kind of thing? So yeah, those will be real case specific. In this case, the teacher said, we're not religious teachers. We're not licensed or ordained. We didn't go to seminary. We didn't receive any kind of formal training. And the court disagreed and said that, teaching the tenets of the faith in those workbooks, taking the kids to chapel and leading out in chapel was enough. So it was real case specific.
So, John, I guess maybe I don't know if there are any other Supreme Court cases you'd want to say, but maybe kind of finishing off by just kind of talking a little bit about how you do integrate your faith in what you do, because one of the things I know about you is, although you have a real passion for the law, you have an incredible devotion to the Lord, and you've always sought to make decisions in your own life that put your faith first, and it's driven your career and everything that you've done. And I don't know if you're comfortable saying something about that, but it's something that I've certainly admire greatly about you, and kind of what that is for you, and why that's important to you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It is important to me. It helps to have a wife who serves as a children's minister, and that she's on staff at a church, and I'm able to serve alongside her. And we are so thankful for our years we served at First Baptist Waxahachie. And you may recall some of the times where something would come up and I would kind of start getting into something, and Stephanie would kind of remind me, that's the way a lawyer would say it and think about it. That's not the way a minister would say it and think about it. And so being married to a minister myself does really kind of help keep me grounded in that. But yeah, it's important to me not just to give legal advice, but to take in the important considerations and heritage and history of the church, and the church in its current context. And like we talked about earlier with the standards, the right legal answer is one thing and the right biblical answer can be different. And so I think our laws are important. I love our system of justice. I love the way that our Supreme Court operates. They don't always get it right. And I like that we operate within these confines of this structure. And I love our government and the way it's set up. It's probably the best way that it can be done, but it's still flawed, and we're still people, and we still make mistakes. And so kind of the important reminder that we're not called to serve even the United States, as great as it is. We're called to serve God. And so his ways aren't our ways. And so just kind of that reminder for pastors and church leaders and church members of who we ultimately serve, whether we agree or disagree with who is currently in political power, whether that be the Supreme Court or another branch of government. So.